The message came on a Tuesday morning at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time. Commander Jake. Harrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when the communication officer on the bridge of the UES Defiant started waving her hands frantically. "Sir, we're getting a priority transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Kelly Roberts called out. Her voice had that edge it got when something big was happening. Jake set down his coffee mug and walked over to the main display screen. The bridge crew gathered around as the alien face appeared on the monitor. It was Ambassador Zixthar from the Velian Empire, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence like she always did when she was nervous. "Attention all human vessels and colonies," the ambassador began. "We are broadcasting an official declaration from the Zephyrian hegemony. Please prepare for immediate transmission." The screen flickered and changed. A new alien appeared. This one much more frightening than the gentle Velian ambassador. The creature had dark purple skin, 6 arms, and teeth that looked like they could bite through steel. When it spoke, its voice sounded like gravel being crushed. "People of Earth, and all human colonies," the alien announced. "I am Supreme War Leader Kethfer of the Zephyrian hegemony. After 1,000 years of what you call peace, we declare this treaty finished. The Zephyrian hegemony now controls this galaxy." Jake felt his crew go quiet behind him. This was not how Tuesday was supposed to go. The alien continued speaking. "We demand that all human colonies surrender immediately. You will stop interfering in galactic affairs. You will hand over control of all your worlds and ships. You have exactly 72 standard hours to comply with our demands." The war leader leaned closer to the camera, his 6 arms spread wide, in what was probably meant to be threatening. "If you do not surrender, we will destroy every human world. We will hunt down every human ship. We will end your species completely. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The transmission ended with a click. The bridge of the Defiant was completely silent for about 5 seconds. Then Navigation Officer Tony Martinez started to giggle. The giggle turned into a chuckle. The chuckle turned into full laughter. "Did that guy just threaten to wipe out humanity?" Tony asked between laughs. "I mean, seriously? Did he do his research first?" Jake found himself smiling despite the situation. "Roberts, get me a direct line to Earth Command. I think President Monroe is going to want to hear about this personally." Back on Earth, President Lisa Monroe was having her morning briefing when the call came through. Defense Secretary Ryan Carter was showing her reports about grain production on the colony worlds when her secretary Nancy Wells burst into the room. "Ma'am, we've got an urgent call from the Defiant. Commander Harrison says it's about a declaration of war." President Monroe looked up from her paperwork. "I'm sorry. Did you say declaration of war? From who?" "The Zephyrian hegemony, ma'am." The president stared at Nancy for a moment. Then she started laughing. It wasn't a polite political laugh. It was the kind of real laughter that comes from deep in your belly. "The Zephyrians?" she managed to say. "Those are the ones with 6 arms and bad attitudes, right? The ones who got kicked out of the Galactic Council for picking fights with everyone." "Yes, ma'am, those are the ones." President Monroe wiped tears from her eyes. "Patch me through to Commander Harrison. I want to hear this for myself." 20 minutes later, the president was watching the alien declaration in her private office. Defense Secretary Carter sat next to her, along with Chief of Staff Wells and Admiral Grace Cooper from the Terran Defense Fleet. When the transmission ended, the room was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then Admiral Cooper snorted with laughter. "Ma'am," she said, trying to keep her voice professional, "are we really supposed to be scared of this guy? He looks like he practices his threatening face in the mirror every morning." Defense Secretary Carter was reading something on his tablet. "According to our intelligence reports, The Zephyrian fleet has about 3,000 ships. They've got plasma cannons and something called void torpedoes. That's it, President Monroe asked. 3,000 ships? Ryan, how many ships do we have in active service? Carter checked his notes. Well, ma'am, if we count everything including the patrol boats and training vessels, we've got about 15,000 ships. But most of them haven't seen real combat in centuries. And our crews? Bored out of their minds, ma'am. We've had 1,000 years of peace. The only action our people see is stopping smugglers and breaking up bar fights on frontier worlds. President Monroe stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the busy streets of New Washington. People were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that aliens had just declared war on humanity. Nancy, she said without turning around, schedule a press conference for this afternoon. I want the full media there. And make sure someone records it properly. I think this is going to be interesting. 3 hours later, President Monroe stood behind the podium in the White House press room. The place was packed with reporters from every major news network. Camera lights blazed as she adjusted the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she began. This morning, we received a communication from a species called the Zephyrian hegemony. They have declared war on humanity and demanded our complete surrender within 72 hours. The room erupted in noise. Reporters started shouting questions, but President Monroe held up her hand for quiet. I'm going to play the complete message for you now, she said. I want you to see exactly what we're dealing with here. The lights dimmed and the alien war leader appeared on the screen behind her. His threatening voice filled the room as he made his demands and promises of destruction. When it ended, President Monroe looked out at the assembled reporters. She could see them trying to process what they had just heard. Then something wonderful happened. Chris Taylor from the Global News Network started to smile. The smile became a grin. The grin became a chuckle. Within seconds, the veteran reporter was laughing so hard he could barely stay in his seat. The laughter spread like wildfire. Amy Foster from the International Broadcasting Corporation was next, followed by Jim Davis from the Colonial News Service. Soon the entire room was filled with the sound of reporters laughing at humanity's first declaration of war in 1,000 years. President Monroe waited for the noise to die down. When she could finally speak again, her own voice was shaking with suppressed laughter. The official response of the United Earth government will be issued tomorrow morning, she announced. Until then, I encourage all citizens to remain calm and go about their normal business. And maybe check out some of the memes that are already starting to appear on social media. Some of them are quite creative. As the reporters filed out of the room, still chuckling and shaking their heads, President Monroe realized something important. For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity had something to be excited about. The war was going to be fun. Admiral Cuthbert stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Render, staring at the reports flooding in from his intelligence officers. His 6 arms moved restlessly as he tried to understand what he was reading. Lieutenant Commander Yixthil, he called to his tactical officer. Explain to me again what the humans are doing. Yixthil looked uncomfortable. His purple skin had turned a darker shade, which meant he was confused or embarrassed. Sir, they appear to be laughing at us. Their communication networks are filled with something they call memes. Pictures with words that mock our declaration of war. Show me. The main screen lit up with images captured from human networks. The first one showed Admiral Cuthbert's face with text that read, "Threatens to destroy humanity. Looks like angry grape." The second showed the human president with text saying, "Aliens declare war. Time to dust off the old playbooks." Admiral Cuthbert's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. This was not the response his war planners had predicted. Fear, panic, desperate negotiations. These were normal reactions to Zephyrian threats. Laughter was not in any of their tactical manuals. "Sir," another officer reported, "we're also picking up increased chatter on their military channels." "But it's not what we expected." "What do you mean?" "Well, sir, they seemed excited. Happy, even. One of their ship captains was heard saying that peace was getting boring, and this might be fun." Admiral Kethver felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever called war with the Zephyrian hegemony fun. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Ranger, Captain Ben Murphy was having the best day he'd had in decades. His crew had turned the bridge into something resembling a comedy show. Navigation Officer Kelly Roberts was doing perfect impressions of the alien, war leader's threatening voice, while engineer Tony Martinez provided sound effects using the ship's communication system. "Attention, puny humans," Kelly said in a deep, gravelly voice. "We will destroy you completely because we have 6 arms and really big teeth." The bridge crew erupted in laughter. Even the normally serious security chief, Amy Foster, was wiping tears from her eyes. "Captain," Communications Officer Steve Walsh reported, "we're getting requests from 17 different news networks wanting to interview crew members about our reaction to the war declaration. Tell them we'll do interviews after lunch." Captain Murphy replied, "Right now we're too busy being terrified of grape-colored aliens with anger management issues." This caused another wave of laughter across the bridge. On Luna Station, Dr. Helen Baker was fielding calls from panicked alien governments across the galaxy. As the leading expert on human psychology, everyone wanted to understand why humans weren't acting according to standard behavioral models. "Ambassador Zixthara," she said into her communication device, "I understand your confusion, but you have to remember that humans have a very different relationship with conflict than most species." The Velian ambassador's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "But Dr. Baker, they should be afraid. The Zephyrians have destroyed entire civilizations. Their fleet is massive. Their weapons are terrible. Why are humans making jokes?" Dr. Baker sighed. "Because, Ambassador, humans have been at peace for 1,000 years. Not because they're weak, but because they chose to be peaceful. There's a big difference. I don't understand. Think of it this way. Imagine you had a pet that you thought was gentle and harmless. Then one day, something threatens your family and the pet turns out to be a sleeping dragon. The humans aren't scared, because they know something the Zephyrians don't." "What do they know?" Dr. Baker looked out her window at the Earth below. "They know what they're capable of." Back in space, Captain Steve Walsh of the diplomatic vessel Use Harmony was preparing for a meeting that nobody in the galaxy would have believed possible. The Velian Empire had requested an emergency diplomatic conference to discuss the human response to the Zephyrian threat. The meeting took place at a neutral station in the Alpha Centauri system. Ambassador Zixthara arrived with a full diplomatic escort, clearly expecting serious negotiations about humanity's surrender terms. Instead, Captain Walsh showed up with a briefcase full of printed memes and a presentation titled "How to Threaten Humans, a Beginner's Guide to Not Being Laughed At." Captain Walsh, Ambassador Zixthara began, "Surely you understand the seriousness of this situation. The Zephyrian hegemony has never been defeated in battle. Their fleet could devastate your colonies." Captain Walsh opened his briefcase and pulled out a printed image. It showed Admiral Kethver's threatening face with text that read, "I will destroy you all, right after I figure out how my spaceship works." "Ambassador," Walsh said, with a perfectly straight face, "with all due respect, have you seen their ships? They look like someone took a regular spaceship and glued weapons to it with space tape." Our engineering crews are taking bets on whether their guns will explode when they try to fire them. The ambassador stared at him. You're not taking this seriously. Oh, we're taking it very seriously, Walsh replied. We're just not scared. There's a difference. While diplomats talked, ordinary humans across the galaxy were treating the impending war like the entertainment event of the century. On the agricultural world of Harvest Prime, Farmer Bill Johnson was explaining the situation to his family over dinner. So these aliens want us to surrender? His wife asked. That's right, honey. They say they'll destroy us if we don't. His teenage son looked up from his food. Dad, didn't you serve in the Defense Force before you became a farmer? Sure did, son. 20 years in the fleet. Were you scared when you got the news? Bill Johnson thought about it for a moment. Not scared, exactly. More like curious. It's been a long time since humanity had a real fight. Part of me wonders if we still remember how to do it right. His wife smiled. Knowing humans, I bet we do. On the industrial world of Forge Prime, factory supervisor Kate Miller was organizing betting pools among her workers. The most popular bet was how long the war would actually last, with most people guessing less than a month. Come on, Kate, one of her workers said. These aliens can't be that easy to beat. Kate looked at the production schedules on her desk. Even during peacetime, her factories produced enough materials to build 1,000 warships every month. That was just one world out of hundreds in human space. Maybe not, she said, but I don't think they did their homework before picking this fight. The betting wasn't limited to the colonies. On Earth itself, sports commentator Mike Turner was already planning his coverage of the coming battles. His network had given him unlimited resources to broadcast what they were calling the war show. This is going to be bigger than the world. Top, he told his production team. Real space battles with real stakes. The ratings are going to be incredible. Meanwhile, at the Terran War College, Dr. Zara Mitchell was dusting off textbooks that hadn't been opened in centuries. Her students were more excited than she'd ever seen them. Professor, one student asked, do you really think we'll get to see actual combat tactics in use? Dr. Mitchell smiled. Well, class, it looks like you're going to get a very practical education in applied military strategy. I suggest you pay attention. This might be the only real war any of us ever see. As the second day after the alien declaration ended, one thing was becoming clear across human space. The Zephyrians had made a fundamental miscalculation. They had assumed that 1,000 years of peace meant that humans had forgotten how to fight. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being forced into it. The countdown to the 72-hour deadline continued, and across human space, people were getting ready for what promised to be the most interesting few weeks in a very long time. The deadline was approaching fast, and across human space, something interesting was happening. While other alien species were preparing for refugee camps and economic collapse, humans were placing bets on how the war would go. Admiral Grace Cooper stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Fleet, looking at the tactical displays with her senior staff. The room should have been tense and serious, but instead, it felt more like a casual meeting between old friends. Coffee, anyone? She asked, gesturing to the table where someone had set up donuts and fresh coffee. We might as well be comfortable while we plan our first war in 1,000 years. Colonel Rick Thompson, her tactical advisor, was already on his second donut. Admiral, I've been looking at the Zephyrian fleet positions. They're using standard attack formations from about 200 years ago. Very predictable. Predictable how? Asked Commander Susan Lee, the fleet's intelligence officer. Rick pulled up a holographic display. See here? They're arranging their ships in what they call the Iron Fist formation. Big ships in the center, smaller ones on the edges. It's supposed to look intimidating. Admiral Cooper studied the display. And what's wrong with that? Nothing, if you're fighting an enemy from 2 centuries ago. But we've had 1,000 years to think about better ways to move ships around. This formation has 17 different weaknesses that I can see just by looking at it. Commander Lee was reading something on her tablet. Admiral, we're getting reports from across the fleet. Morale is the highest it's been in decades. Crews are actually volunteering for extra duty shifts. This was true. Across human space, military personnel were reacting to the coming war with something that surprised even their own commanders: enthusiasm. On the battleship UES Titan, Chief Engineer Danny Clark was explaining the situation to his repair crew. Listen up, people. We might actually get to see if all this equipment works the way it's supposed to. You mean we've never tested our weapons in real combat? Asked a young technician. Danny grinned. Kid, we've been testing weapons in simulations for 1,000 years. We've run every possible scenario about 1,000,000 times each. But nobody alive has ever fired a shot in anger. We're about to find out if our theories actually work. The young technician looked worried. That doesn't sound very reassuring. Are you kidding? Danny laughed. This is the most exciting thing that's happened since I joined the fleet. We get to find out if humans are still as good at fighting as our history books say we are. The excitement wasn't limited to military personnel. Across the colonies, civilians were reacting to the approaching war with curiosity rather than fear. On the farming world of New Eden, restaurant owner Maria Santos had started advertising last meal specials with a wink and a smile. The restaurant was packed every night with people wanting to be part of the historic moment. You know, she told her customers, my grandfather used to tell stories about the old days when humans fought wars all the time. He always said we were really good at it. Guess we're about to find out if that's still true. Her customers would nod and order another round of drinks. Nobody seemed particularly worried about the alien threat. On the entertainment world of Paradise Station, comedian Pete Johnson was performing to sold-out crowds every night. His new routine about the Zephyrian threat had gone viral across human networks. So these aliens show up, he would say to his audience, and they're like, surrender or we'll destroy you. And humans are like, okay, but can you wait until after dinner? We're having tacos. The audience would roar with laughter. The idea of humans being intimidated by alien threats was apparently hilarious to everyone. But the real truth about human attitudes became clear during a conversation that was recorded by accident. Chief Engineer Danny Clark was talking to his friend over the ship's communication system, not knowing that the channel was being monitored by alien intelligence services. You know, Rick, Danny said, it's been a while since we've had a good fight. The peace was getting boring anyway. What do you mean? Rick asked. I mean, we've spent 1,000 years keeping other people from fighting each other. We've been the galaxy's police force, breaking up arguments and stopping wars. But we haven't had a real fight ourselves in forever. And that's bad? Danny was quiet for a moment. Not bad, exactly. Just boring. My great-great-grandfather fought in the last real war humanity had. He used to tell stories about space battles and clever tactics and crews working together under pressure. I always wondered what that would be like. So you're looking forward to this war? I'm curious about it. I want to see if we're still as good at fighting as we used to be. And I want to see what these Zephyrians are really made of. This conversation was intercepted by Zephyrian intelligence and forwarded to Admiral Kethvar. When he read the transcript, he felt that cold feeling in his stomach again. The humans weren't preparing for war because they had to. They were preparing because they wanted to. Dr. Helen Baker, still fielding calls from worried alien governments, tried to explain this to a gathering of Galactic ambassadors via holographic conference. You have to understand, she said, looking at the assembled alien faces. Humans didn't become peaceful because we got weak. We became peaceful because we got bored with winning fights. Ambassador Zixthara blinked her 4 eyes rapidly. But surely they must be afraid of the Zephyrian fleet. Ambassador, humans have been studying warfare for their entire history. Even during the 1,000 years of peace, our military colleges never stopped teaching tactics and strategy. Our engineers never stopped designing better weapons. Our crews never stopped training for battles. But why? If they wanted peace, Dr. Baker sighed. Because humans prepare for war even when they want peace. It's just how we're built. And now, for the first time in a millennium, they get to find out if all that preparation was worth anything. On the frontier world of last chance mining, Supervisor Carl Davis was talking to his workers during their lunch break. Boys, I got word from my cousin in the Defense Force. The military is asking for volunteers with industrial experience. Seems they need people who know how to work under pressure. You thinking of signing up, Carl? One of his workers asked. Carl looked up at the sky, where somewhere among the stars, alien warships were preparing to attack humanity. I'm thinking about it. I mean, when's the next time we're going to get a chance to be part of something this big? Could be dangerous. Everything worth doing is dangerous. Besides, my grandfather always said humans were the best fighters in the galaxy. Maybe it's time to prove that's still true. Meanwhile, at the Terran War College, Dr. Zara Mitchell was teaching a class that had suddenly become very relevant. Her students hung on every word as she explained military theory that might actually be used in combat within days. Remember, she told them, warfare isn't just about having bigger guns or stronger ships. It's about thinking faster than your enemy and doing things they don't expect. Professor, one student asked, do you think the Zephyrians have done their homework about human military capabilities? Dr. Mitchell looked at the tactical reports on her desk. Based on what I'm seeing, I don't think they have. They seem to be planning for the humans they think we are, not the humans we actually are. What's the difference? They think we're soft because we've been peaceful. They don't understand that being peaceful was a choice, not a necessity. And they're about to learn that there's a big difference between the two. As the final day before the deadline began, one thing was becoming clear to anyone paying attention. The Zephyrians had declared war on a species that was genuinely excited about fighting them. Across human space, people were treating the approaching conflict like the sporting event of the century. The aliens wanted to see human fear and desperation. Instead, they were about to face an enemy that was happy to finally have something interesting to do. The countdown continued, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what 1,000 years of voluntary peace had been hiding. The 72-hour deadline expired at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Cathfer expected to receive desperate messages from human leaders begging for mercy. Instead, he received a single transmission from Earth. It was a video message from President Lisa Monroe, sitting calmly behind her desk with a cup of tea. Admiral Cathfer, she said with a polite smile, thank you for your ultimatum. We've considered your demands carefully and have decided to decline. We look forward to meeting your fleet in battle. Please try to make it interesting. The transmission ended with President Monroe taking a sip of her tea. Admiral Cathfer stared at the blank screen for a full minute before turning to his tactical officer. Did she just tell us to make it interesting? Yes, sir. She did. Order the fleet to advance. It's time to show these humans what real warfare looks like. The first battle happened in the Kepler system, where a small Zephyrian advance fleet encountered Commodore Alex Rivar's patrol group. The aliens expected to find desperate human ships running for safety. Instead, they found something that made no sense at all. The human ships were dancing. There was no other word for it. The 5 human vessels moved through space in patterns. That looked more like a performance than a military formation. They spun and twisted around each other, their movements perfectly coordinated like they had practiced this dance for years. "Sir," reported the Zephyrian fleet commander, "the human ships are moving in ways that don't match any known tactical formation." "Then destroy them," Admiral Kethver replied over the communication link. "We're trying, sir. But every time we lock weapons on one ship, it moves behind another one. And they keep changing positions so fast our targeting computers can't keep up." On the bridge of the UES Storm, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Bell was having the time of her life. As tactical officer, she was controlling the ship's experimental gravitational manipulator, a device that could push and pull objects through space. "Sarah," called Commodore Rivera, "see if you can tie those 3 destroyers together." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied with a grin. She worked her controls like a master pianist, sending invisible gravitational waves toward the enemy ships. The first destroyer suddenly lurched sideways into the second one. The second one crashed into the third. For a brief moment, all 3 ships were tangled together in space like a knot. "Beautiful work," the Commodore said. "Now let's see if their shields can handle close-range plasma fire." The human ships opened fire at the tangled enemy vessels. The Zephyrian ships, designed to fight at long range, couldn't return fire effectively while stuck together. Within minutes, all 3 were disabled. "This is Storm to all ships," Commodore Rivera announced. "Enemy advance fleet neutralized. No human casualties. Moving to secure the area." The news of the victory spread across human space faster than light-speed communication. On Earth, sports commentator Mike Turner was providing live coverage of the battle to an audience of billions. "Ladies and gentlemen, that was absolutely beautiful," he announced to his viewers. "The human fleet just demonstrated a new tactical formation I'm calling the Dancing Death. The aliens never knew what hit them." His co-host, former Admiral Lisa Hayes, nodded in agreement. "Mike, what we just saw was a perfect example of why humans spent 1,000 years studying warfare, even during peacetime. Every movement those ships made was calculated and precise. And the gravitational manipulator? That's pure human innovation. While other species focused on bigger guns, we focused on smarter tactics. The Zephyrians just learned that lesson the hard way." Back on the Void Render, Admiral Kethver was receiving reports that made his 6 arms tremble with rage. "How did we lose an entire advance fleet to 5 human ships?" "Sir, their technology is unlike anything in our databases. They're using gravitational fields as weapons. Our ships aren't designed to handle that kind of attack." "What about their tactics?" "Completely unpredictable, sir. They fight like they're enjoying themselves. Our battle computers can't model an enemy that treats warfare as entertainment." But the real shock came 3 days later at the Tau Ceti system. The Zephyrian main fleet, over 2,000 ships strong, arrived expecting to find a heavily fortified human stronghold. Instead, they found Admiral Jackson Ford's battle group waiting for them in perfect formation. Every human ship hung motionless in space, their hulls gleaming in the light of the system's twin stars. As the alien fleet approached, something unexpected happened. Music began playing across all communication channels. "What is that sound?" demanded the Zephyrian fleet commander. "It appears to be human music, sir. Classical compositions from their ancient period." Admiral Ford's voice came over the communication system, calm and polite. "Good morning, Admiral Kethver. Welcome to the Tau Ceti system. We thought you might enjoy some music while we demonstrate proper fleet tactics. Today's selection is the 1812 Overture. Please listen carefully to the timing." What happened next became known as the Symphony of Destruction. The human fleet moved in perfect harmony with the music. As the classical piece built to its crescendo, The ship spread out in a formation that looked like a flower blooming in space. When the music reached its most dramatic moments, the human ships opened fire. But this wasn't random shooting. Every blast was timed to match the rhythm of the music. Every maneuver followed the tempo of the orchestra. The human fleet turned warfare into an art form. The Zephyrian ships, designed for straightforward combat, couldn't adapt to an enemy that fought like they were conducting a symphony. Human vessels appeared and disappeared from unexpected angles, their attacks perfectly synchronized with musical crescendos. "Sir," reported a panicked Zephyrian officer, "we've lost 30 ships and the humans haven't taken any damage at all." "How is that possible?" "They're fighting to music, sir. Our tactical computers don't know how to respond to an enemy that uses artistic timing in their attacks." Lieutenant Commander Sarah Bell, now aboard Admiral Ford's flagship, was using her gravitational manipulator to create patterns in space that matched the music. Enemy ships found themselves pushed into positions where human weapons could hit them easily. "Sarah," Admiral Ford called over the sound of the orchestra, "can you arrange those cruisers into a spiral pattern? The music is building to a finale." "Already on it, sir," Sarah replied. She sent gravitational waves toward the enemy formation, gently guiding their ships into a spiral shape. As the music reached its final dramatic notes, every human ship in the fleet fired at once. The concentrated fire destroyed 15 enemy vessels in a single perfectly timed volley. Admiral Kethfer watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that was clearly having fun. "Order all ships to retreat. Full withdrawal to the outer system. Sir, are we surrendering? We're regrouping. And we're sending a message to High Command that we need reinforcements. A lot of reinforcements." On Earth, Mike Turner was practically shouting with excitement as he covered the battle. Folks, what we just witnessed was the most beautiful military engagement in galactic history. Admiral Ford's fleet just defeated a force 6 times their size without losing a single ship. Admiral Hayes was studying the tactical display. "Mike, this battle is going to be studied in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The humans just proved that superior tactics and coordination can overcome any numerical advantage. And the music? Pure psychological warfare." The Zephyrians were so confused by the musical timing that they couldn't predict what the humans would do. Next, it was brilliant. Across human space, the news of the victory sparked celebrations that lasted for days. But more importantly, it sent a message to every alien species in the galaxy. The humans weren't just winning. They were winning while having fun. The war that was supposed to destroy humanity had instead become humanity's chance to show the true galaxy what they were really capable of. And they were just getting started. Admiral Kethfer, retreating toward the edge of the system, realized with growing horror that his species had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't declared war on a peaceful civilization. They had declared war on a sleeping giant. And that giant was wide awake now. 3 weeks after the Zephyrian hegemony declared war on humanity, Admiral Kethfer found himself doing something he had never done before in his military career. He was asking for peace. The meeting took place aboard the neutral station Harmony Point, floating in empty space between human and Zephyrian territory. Admiral Kethfer arrived with a full escort of his remaining ships, while Admiral Grace Cooper came alone in her flagship. Kethfer's 6 arms moved nervously as he sat across from the human admiral in the station's conference room. His purple skin had turned pale, and his 4 eyes kept blinking rapidly. "Admiral Cooper," he began, his voice much quieter than it had been in his war declaration. "We need to talk." Admiral Cooper leaned back in her chair, a slight smile on her face. She looked completely relaxed, like she was having coffee with an old friend instead of negotiating with an enemy commander. "Of course, Admiral. What would you like to discuss?" We want to stop fighting. Already? But we were just getting started. My crews were hoping this would last at least a month. Kethver stared at her. Admiral, in 3 weeks, you have destroyed over half our fleet. Your forces have captured 12 of our outposts. And yesterday, one of your ships disabled an entire squadron by playing music at them until their crews got confused and crashed into each other. Admiral Cooper nodded. Yes, that was Captain Murphy's idea. He calls it the musical chair maneuver. Very creative. How do we fight an enemy that treats war like a game? Admiral Cooper's smile faded slightly. Admiral, I think you've misunderstood something important about humanity. We don't treat war like a game. We treat it like an art form. What's the difference? A game has rules that everyone agrees to follow. Art is about doing something beautiful and perfect, regardless of what your opponent expects. Kethver felt that cold feeling in his stomach again. We studied your species for years before this war. All our intelligence said humans were peaceful, weak, that you had forgotten how to fight. We were peaceful, Admiral Cooper agreed. But you made a mistake in your intelligence gathering. You assumed that because we chose peace, we had lost the ability to make war. But you've been at peace for 1,000 years. Admiral Cooper stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Admiral, let me tell you something about human nature. We didn't become peaceful because we got weak. We became peaceful because we got really, really good at war. I don't understand. Think about it this way. If you're the best fighter in your neighborhood, eventually fighting becomes boring. Everyone either runs away from you or asks you to protect them. After a while, you start looking for other things to do with your time. Kethver's 4 eyes blinked slowly. So the 1,000 years of peace was humanity taking a break from conquest because we'd gotten bored with winning. But you reminded us why we enjoyed it in the first place. The truth was spreading across the galaxy faster than the news of human victories. On the Velian homeworld, Ambassador Zixthara was explaining the situation to her government council. Honored leaders, she said, her 4 eyes wide with something between fear and respect. We have completely misunderstood the human species. For the past millennium. Explain, commanded the council leader. The humans weren't weak during the 1,000 years of peace. They were restraining themselves. They chose to be peaceful because they were so overwhelmingly dangerous that conquest had become boring for them. The council chamber fell silent. Are you saying, the leader asked slowly, the humans have been protecting us from themselves? Yes, Honored One. That's exactly what I'm saying. Back on Earth, the war had officially become the most watched event in human history. Sports. Commentator Mike Turner was wrapping up his coverage of what everyone was calling the shortest war in galactic history. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to his global audience, after 23 days of combat, the Zephyrian hegemony has formally requested a ceasefire. The final score, humans, still undefeated. Aliens, thoroughly educated. His co-host, Admiral Lisa Hayes, was reviewing the final battle reports. Mike, what we witnessed over the past 3 weeks was humanity remembering something we'd almost forgotten. We're really, really good at this. And the final casualty count? 0 human military deaths. Some minor injuries, mostly from crews laughing too hard during battle. On the Zephyrian side, about 3,000 ships destroyed or captured, but surprisingly few actual deaths. It seems our forces went out of their way to disable enemy ships rather than destroy them completely. That seems very human. It is. Even in war, humans prefer to win cleverly rather than brutally. Captain Laura White of the UES Peacekeeper was conducting interviews with her crew about their experiences in humanity's first war in 1,000 years. How did it feel to be in actual combat? She asked her weapons officer. Honestly, Captain? It felt like finally getting to use all the training we'd been doing for decades. We've run battle simulations a million times, but this was the first chance to see if we were actually any good at the real thing. And were we? The weapons officer grinned. Captain, we were better than good. We were autistic. On the colony world of New Frontier, children were already playing war games in the schoolyard, reenacting the Battle of Tau Ceti with stick spaceships and humming classical music. I'm Admiral Ford, announced 8-year-old Tommy Chun. I'm going to defeat the aliens with beautiful music. I'm Admiral Cathvar, replied his friend Sarah Kim. I'm going to surrender because humans are too scary to fight. Their teacher, Ms. Rebecca Davis, watched the children play and realized something important. An entire generation of human children would grow up knowing that their species was not just peaceful, but powerful by choice. The formal peace treaty was signed 1 week later. The Zephyrian hegemony agreed to join the Galactic Council under human protection, becoming humanity's newest protectorate. The irony was not lost on anyone. The species that had tried to end human influence in galactic affairs had ended up as humanity's responsibility. Admiral Cathvar, now wearing the uniform of a Galactic Council member, gave his final statement to the galactic press. We attacked humanity because we thought they were weak, he said, his voice humble. We learned that they were peaceful by choice, not by necessity. There is a big difference between a species that cannot fight and a species that chooses not to fight. What will you tell other species who might consider challenging humanity? Asked the reporter. Cathvar's 4 eyes focused on the camera. Don't. Just don't. Humans have spent 1,000 years being nice to everyone because they're too dangerous to be anything else. If you make them stop being nice, you won't like what happens next. President Lisa Monroe gave the final speech from the White House, addressing not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The past month has reminded us of something important, she said. Peace is not the absence of the ability to make war. Peace is the choice not to use that ability. Humanity chose peace for 1,000 years, and we'll choose it for 1,000 more. But we'll also remember that it's a choice, not a weakness. She looked directly into the camera. To our new friends in the Zephyrian hegemony, welcome to the galactic community. To everyone else, humanity is still here to help keep the peace. We're just making sure everyone remembers why that peace is a good idea. After the cameras turned off, President Monroe walked to her window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were returning to their peaceful patrols, their crews satisfied with a job well done. The 1,000-year peace had ended for exactly 23 days. Now it was beginning again, but this time everyone in the galaxy understood exactly what they were choosing peace instead of. The most dangerous predator humanity had proven once again was the one that chose not to hunt.